I wasn't supposed to be there. No one said it to my face, but everything made it clear. 3 weeks before graduation, my son Ethan had called his mother. His voice was calm, his words carefully chosen. "It would be better if Dad didn't come," he said, "so he doesn't make things uncomfortable." When his mother told me this, there were long pauses between her sentences. In those silences, I understood everything that wasn't said. I went anyway. He was my son, after all. Columbia University, May. One of those days when the weather feels perfect, yet something inside you is inexplicably cold. Footsteps echoed across campus. Families took photos. Laughter hung in the air. Somewhere, a bottle of champagne popped. Somewhere else, a mother cried quietly. Everyone was wrapped up in their own happiness. I sat in the very back, row 34. Not close to the stage and not quite feeling like I truly belonged there either. His mother was in the third row, sitting beside her new husband. Her shoulders were straight. There was a proud, complete look on her face. I noticed it as I scanned the room. The ceremony dragged on. Speeches, awards, polite applause. I was waiting for just one name. Ethan Michael Harrison. The murmur in the hall suddenly swelled. Applause grew louder. Cameras turned. By the way, have you ever watched your own child graduate? What did it make you feel? Write it in the comments. Let's talk about it. As Ethan walked across the stage, 4 years flashed through my mind all at once. Scholarships that weren't enough, loans that were cut off, those late-night messages. "Dad, can we make this work?" $53,000 in total. I remembered every single dollar. He took the diploma. He smiled. He posed for the photo. In that moment, I felt proud. And then something inside me quietly broke loose. Because he didn't look at his mother. He didn't look at the applause. He turned his head and scanned the room, like he was searching for someone. Me. Our eyes met. It lasted half a second. There was no surprise on his face. No joy either. Just a look as if he needed to be sure. Then he looked away. And in that moment, I understood this. I didn't belong there, but I was still part of the bill. And this was only the beginning. After the ceremony, families flooded the lawn. Photos, hugs, congratulations everywhere. I stayed back, watched from a distance. Ethan was surrounded. Susan, Mark, Ethan's girlfriend Claire, friends, professors, everyone wanting a piece of the graduate. My car was 6 blocks away, meter running. I started to leave. Then someone tapped my shoulder. I turned. It was Claire, Ethan's girlfriend of 2 years, blonde, mid-20s, looked nervous. "Mr. Harrison?" "That's me." She glanced over her shoulder, back toward Ethan, who was still surrounded by well-wishers, then handed me a folded piece of paper. "He asked me to give you this," she said quietly. "Don't open it here." "Why not?" "Just don't. He'll explain." She walked away before I could ask anything else, disappearing back into the crowd of families celebrating their graduates. I looked at the folded paper in my hand. Standard notebook paper, folded twice. My name written on the outside in Ethan's handwriting. The same handwriting I'd seen on report cards and birthday cards for 23 years. I didn't open it. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, engine off, windows down, the spring air carrying sounds of celebration from campus. Then I unfolded the note. "Dad, I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. If Mom ever said she cheated, she didn't. It wasn't Mom. It was me. I'll explain everything tonight if you're willing to meet. 8 p.m., the coffee shop on Amsterdam Ave. If you're not there, I'll understand, but I hope you are. Ethan." I read it 3 times. If Mom ever said she cheated, she didn't. My hands started shaking before I even finished the second line. Everything I thought I knew about my divorce just crumbled in that moment. It wasn't Mom. It was me. What wasn't Mom? What was him? I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at those 2 devastating lines, cars passing by, other families driving home from graduation with their proud graduates, normal people with normal problems and normal secrets. Then I started the car, and I drove to the coffee shop early. I got there at 7:15, ordered black coffee, sat at a corner table by the window, watching people live their normal lives. I waited. Nothing could have prepared me. Ethan walked in at 7:58, 2 minutes early, just like he'd been as a kid for everything that mattered to him. He saw me immediately, hesitated, then walked over. "You came," he said. "I came." He sat down across from me. No coffee, no small talk, just sat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. 6 years sat between us. Then Ethan said, I lied to you 6 years ago. About what? About Mom, about the affair, about why you two split up. I felt my chest tighten. The affair. Susan and I divorced in 2013. She told me she'd been seeing someone else, said it had been going on for months, said she wanted out, but that wasn't how it started. What about it? I asked. Ethan looked down. At his hands. There was no affair. Not then. Mom didn't cheat on you. I stared at him. What? She didn't cheat. I made it up. The coffee shop felt too quiet, too small. You made it up? I told you I saw her with someone, with Dylan, at that restaurant downtown. Remember? I said I saw them holding hands, kissing. I said I didn't want to tell you, but I thought you should know. Dylan was the name he invented. Mark came later, real, legal, and painfully ordinary. I remembered. Ethan had been 18, fresh out of high school. He'd come to me one night, said he'd seen Susan with another man, said he felt horrible telling me, but he couldn't keep it from me. I'd confronted Susan the next day. She'd denied it, said Ethan was mistaken, said Dylan was just a work colleague, but I didn't believe her, because why would Ethan lie? We separated 2 weeks later, divorced 4 months after that. Later she told me she'd been seeing someone, because it felt easier than admitting our son had lied, and she was too exhausted to fight me. Why? I said. My voice sounded far away. Why would you do that? Ethan's eyes were red. Because I wanted you gone. The words hung in the air. I stared at him. What? He looked down. Didn't answer. I was 18, Ethan said quietly. I didn't think it through. You didn't think? I stopped, shook my head. Ethan, you told me you saw your mother kissing another man. You looked me in the eye and lied. For what? He said he didn't know, but I didn't believe that either. I kept thinking about Susan, about how she must have felt when she found out. Did your mother know? I asked. Not at first. She found out a year later, I told her. He looked down. She wanted to tell you, but it was complicated. Complicated. The word felt like an excuse wrapped in a reason. By then I'd already moved on. New apartment, new routines, new life built on the wreckage of a lie I didn't know existed. Make it worse? I stood up. Ethan, 6 years. 6 years I thought she cheated on me. He said he knew. He said he understood. But understanding and feeling aren't the same thing. I'm trying to make it right now, he said. That's why I'm telling you. 6 years late. I know it's late, but I couldn't get married without telling you the truth. I looked at him. My son. The boy I'd raised. The man who'd destroyed my marriage and then let me pay for his education while carrying that secret like it was nothing. You're still my father. Am I? I said. Because a father is supposed to be someone you can trust, and you threw that away the day you decided to destroy my marriage. I was just a kid. You were 18, old enough to know that lies have consequences. I made a mistake. No, I said quietly. You made a choice. At that moment, I didn't know yet, but everything I believed about my family was already gone. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly through the dark streets, no destination in mind, just drove, trying to process the magnitude of what my son had just confessed. I wanted you gone. That sentence kept looping in my head. Not, I made a mistake. I wanted you gone. Past midnight, I pulled into a rest stop, called Susan. She answered, voice groggy. Hello? Did Ethan tell you he was going to tell me? Pause. No? When? Tonight. After graduation. What did he say? Everything. The lie. Why he did it. I heard her breathe. Did he tell you why? He said he wanted me gone. That's all he said. Then he shut down. Susan was quiet. There's more, she said. More? He told me the full story a year after the divorce. It wasn't just rebellion. Then what? He was jealous, she said. Of us. Of our marriage. And suddenly, pieces started falling into place. The anniversary dinner when he was 8, faked sick so Susan would stay home. The cabin trip when he was 12, hurt himself the day before so we'd cancel. I'd thought those were accidents, bad timing, childhood drama. Looking back, I realized they weren't random at all. They were tests to see if she'd choose him over me. Every single time. He wanted to be the only one I chose, Susan said quietly. If you were gone, I'd focus only on him. That's what he wanted. I sat in the dark parking lot, cars passing on the highway. So he destroyed our marriage, I said slowly, because he wanted to be the center of your universe. Essentially, yes. The word hung there between us like a verdict. 24 years of marriage reduced to one son's jealousy. And you didn't tell me this before because I didn't want you to hate him more than you already did, and because I was ashamed. What kind of mother raises a child capable of that level of manipulation? We sat in silence. Can you live with it? Susan asked. I don't know. He's getting married. Claire's lovely. They're good together. Good for them. Will you go to the wedding? I thought about the receipts in my desk drawer. $53,000 spent on a son who'd destroyed my marriage because he wanted to be the only person Susan chose. Every tuition payment, every emergency transfer, every time I'd believed I was supporting someone who loved me. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. A few days later, Ethan called. I watched his name glow on my screen for 3 full rings before I answered. Not because I didn't want to talk, because I didn't know who I'd be talking to anymore, my son or the boy who rewrote my life with a lie. Dad, he said, too calm, like the coffee shop never happened. Claire and I are engaged. We're getting married next spring. I stared at the folder on my desk. Receipts, tuition statements, transfers, proof of love written in numbers. Congratulations, I said. I want you there, he continued, at the wedding. I want you to be part of it. Part of it. Like my role was a seat assignment. And your mother? I asked. Of course. Mom will be there. Mark too. There it was. The picture he wanted. Everyone smiling. Everyone pretending the past was just a bad season that ended. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was simple. He wasn't calling for forgiveness. He was calling to make sure the story ended neatly. You want me at your wedding, I said, after you admitted you blew up my marriage. I was 18, he replied quickly. I was a kid. Kids make terrible mistakes. A mistake, like dropping a glass, like forgetting a date, not like planting a lie that poisons a home for 6 years. You've known for years, I said, and you waited until now. Silence. And in that silence, the real reason rose to the surface like oil in water. So that's why you waited, I said quietly. My money. He didn't deny it. He didn't even argue. He just breathed, like he'd been caught with his hand on the lock, still trying to turn it. Partly, he said, but also because it's the right thing to do. The right thing, I repeated. 6 years late, he started explaining therapy, growth, accountability, words that sounded polished, like he'd rehearsed them for a room full of witnesses, but none of it sounded like a son. It sounded like someone filing paperwork to close a case. Dad, he asked, are you there? I looked down at the receipts again. $53,000, and not one apology that could bring back what he took. I'm here, I said. Will you come? I held the phone tighter, not because I was shaking, but because I was realizing something worse. He didn't need me. He needed my presence, my stamp of approval, my silence. I'll think about it, I said. Then I ended the call, and when the screen went dark, my hand was shaking anyway. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Ethan's face in that coffee shop. Not guilty, relieved, like he'd been carrying a weight and finally found someone else to hand it to. But I'd been carrying it too, for 6 years. Only I didn't know it was a lie. 6 years of resentment built on fiction. 3 days later, I called my lawyer. His name was Martin, estate attorney. I need to make some changes, I said. What kind of changes? I want to remove my son as a beneficiary. Martin was quiet. That's a significant change. Can I ask why? I told him. The lie, the divorce, the confession. You're sure about this? I'm sure. What about his wedding? I'm attending to see if he's actually sorry. And if he's not, then the will stays as is. Martin drafted the amendment that week. I signed it, notarized, filed. Ethan was out. Everything would go to charity, cancer research, the children's hospital, scholarships. Then I waited for the wedding. Spring 2020, March 14th. Except it didn't happen. COVID hit. The world shut down. The wedding was postponed, first to June, then September, then the following spring. During the pandemic, Ethan called more than he had in years, video calls, asking how I was doing. I answered every call, kept them brief, didn't mention the will. In one call, Claire was there, smiling, waving. Sometimes I wondered if she knew the truth, or if she was just marrying the version of my son he showed the world. Dad, I've been going to therapy, Ethan said during one call, working through what I did to you and Mom. My therapist says I was selfish, that I couldn't share her. The honesty caught me off guard. It was the first time he'd acknowledged that his actions had destroyed lives. I didn't answer. After he hung up, I thought about changing the will back. I didn't. When they finally had their wedding in April 2021, I went. I sat in the back row, only 30 people, thanks to social distancing. I watched Ethan marry Claire, watched him promise to love her and honor her and always tell her the truth. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. He looked happy, genuinely happy, like he'd forgotten what he'd done to get there. After the wedding, I went home to my empty house, the same house I'd lived in alone for 6 years, the same rooms that had echoed with silence since the divorce. Sat in my study, pulled out the folder marked Ethan College. I opened the folder marked Ethan College and realized I'd kept proof of everything, except the one lie that mattered. $53,000 in documented support, $0 in documented honesty. I wrote a letter. Ethan, I went to your wedding, not because I forgave you, but because I wanted to see if you understood what you took from me. You didn't just ruin my marriage, you ruined my trust. In you, in Susan, in the idea that family doesn't lie to destroy each other. At the ceremony, I listened to you promise Claire you'd always tell her the truth. I hope you mean it this time. You told me you were 18, that you were young, that you made a mistake, but you weren't a child. You were old enough to know the difference between right and wrong, and you chose wrong. For 6 years, I've removed you from my will. You'll get nothing, because I'm done rewarding cruelty. You wanted me at your wedding. I was there, but I'm not there for you anymore. I hope your marriage lasts longer than mine did. Dad, I sealed it, addressed it, mailed it 2 days later. Ethan called a week after that. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Dad, I got your letter. I understand why you're angry. I don't agree with cutting me out of the will, but I understand it. I hurt you. I hurt Mom. I hurt everyone because I was selfish. There was a pause. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I know you probably won't call back, but I'm not done trying to be the son you deserved, even if it's too late. I love you, Dad. I never called back. Ethan and Claire are still married, 4 years now. They had a baby last year, a daughter, named her after Susan, according to the birth announcement that somehow found its way to my mailbox. Susan sent me a photo 6 months later, said Ethan was hoping that being a grandfather might soften my heart toward him. I looked at the photo once. Tiny face, Susan's eyes, Ethan's smile, the same smile he'd worn when he was 18, and told me he'd seen his mother kissing another man. I deleted the photo immediately, not because I don't care, but because caring doesn't erase what Ethan did, doesn't rebuild the marriage he destroyed with his calculated lie, doesn't give me back 6 years of believing I'd been betrayed. People ask if I regret cutting Ethan out, if I feel guilty about missing granddaughter milestones. I don't, because guilt is for people who did something wrong. I didn't lie. Ethan did. I didn't destroy a marriage for attention. Ethan did. He destroyed a 24-year marriage because he wanted his mother to focus only on him. Then, he let me pay for his college education while he carried that secret like it was nothing. Then, he waited until graduation to confess, because he needed his conscience clear for his wedding day. And sometimes the quietest revenge isn't yelling. It's just not being there anymore. Team Dad or Team Ethan? Would you forgive him? Ethan said he made a mistake, but mistakes are forgetting someone's birthday. Ruining a marriage with a calculated lie isn't a mistake. It's a choice. And I made mine. Some people get second chances. Ethan got a college degree I helped pay for, a wedding I attended despite everything he'd done to our family, and a clean conscience. That was his second chance. Some lies are simply too big to forgive. Some damage simply can't be repaired. He rewrote my marriage with a lie, so I rewrote my will with ink. And some fathers finally learn when to stop trying and walk away. If you love quiet revenge and family twists, check the playlist next.